Alan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan.
You are a legend in the D.C. area, and your work ethic is legendary. People talk about it. I've seen it. And I know waking up at 4:30 in the morning has been part of your routine for a long time. What does waking up that early do for you?
Actually, it's probably closer to 5. I get up, have a cup of coffee, read the paper. First thing I probably do is check my text and emails. I just get myself ready for the day every day. I work out, I have a Hebrew class, and then I go and work the rest of the day.
And do you see the difference between when you look around and maybe you watch other people, how they start their day, what time they start their day, and what you've accomplished by 9 a.m.? Do you realize that?
Well, let me put it this way. I do think that there's not a lot of other insurance agents getting up at 5 in the morning and preparing the way I do. I think, prior preparation prevents poor performance. I'm always thinking about that. And frankly, I don't care what other people do. I mean, it's a little like competition. I'm not going to say anything bad about my competition, just like I know you don't, at your restaurant. You got to do the best you can for yourself and make yourself proud.
And this habit, let's call it intense preparation and sticking to that routine. I know wrestling was a big part of your life, still a big part of your life in many ways from the support you give to wrestling programs at American University. When you think about being a champion high school wrestler, a Division I college wrestler, captain of your team for 3 years, are there aspects of what you learned and took from those wrestling days that affect you as an entrepreneur?
Well, look, I grew up in Needham, Massachusetts. I was a swimmer. And in case you haven't noticed, I didn't grow. So all of a sudden one day when I'm 10 years old, I'm winning, and by 13, I'm losing. We had a good wrestling team. I was very strong, but frankly, I probably weighed about 145 pounds. And this kid on the wrestling team shattered his arm, who was a state champion. And my biology teacher, Mr. Griffin, said to me, "We don't have a swimming team. Why don't you come out for wrestling?" So I needed to suck down and lose about 20 pounds, working my butt off to do that. And I was a decent wrestler. I mean, my record gets better every year. But I was a 118-pounder, and there's not a lot of men walking around at 118 that aren't jockeys. So I probably could have been a jockey, but I decided to be a wrestler. So John McHugh, who was third in the country from University of Maryland, at 118, wrote me a handwritten note, said, "We'll give you a tuition." And my family had no money. So basically, I went to American University, hitchhiked down here. My parents sent the trunk down to the university. And the first day I walked in to the coach's office, and the guy must have weighed 190. And I looked at him and I said, "Boy, did you plump up?" He said, "No, I'm not McHugh, and my name's Bob Karsh." He was my coach, and he's still a mentor to me. But the lessons from wrestling, hard work, perseverance, have always stayed with me. If you can wrestle, I think everything else is easy.
So what is it about wrestling that makes you say that? If you can wrestle, you can do anything.
Well, it's just a very tough sport. If anybody has ever even fooled around, wrestling, after 5 or 6, minutes, you're exhausted. So one, you have to get strong. You have to lift weights. You have to do cardiovascular. You have to watch your weight. You have to watch what you eat. So if you take everything and combine it, besides that, it's a skill sport. Look, I don't take anything away from somebody that's running track. But with wrestling, for every move, there's a counter, and for every counter, there's a move. You have to learn all those. The best wrestlers, I think, are very strategic, they're thoughtful, and they're always working. I can remember Dan Gable, who was like a legend in wrestling.
Sure.
He came to my house because we had dinner to talk about Title IX many years ago, which hurt sports like wrestling and stuff like that. 11 o'clock at night, Dan Gable goes down to our gym and works out. And he was probably 48 years old at the time. So once you get the habits, and I also say practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. You got to do the right things all the time. And it's just been a lesson that helped me selling life insurance. If you don't work hard at it, you're not going to be successful. You're going to get a lot of no's. I try to get a few yeses.
The determination that I've seen from you over the years, the reputation that you've built, and hearing the aspects of wrestling. So I was also a wrestler. So, you and I have never talked about this, but the parallel to entrepreneurship for me is clear. If you don't prepare, if you don't plan, and if you don't manage yourself to do the work, you won't be successful as an entrepreneur. And wrestling, my takeaway, I didn't have anywhere near the career that you had in wrestling. I just wasn't good enough. I tried to wrestle as a D1 wrestler at GW, and I wasn't good enough. I was on the team for 6 weeks. I walked on, and then I walked off. But that determination and the ability to learn the details, stay committed, and get your ass kicked and lose. Take the loss. All those times I walked off the mat when I lost, there's no one to blame but yourself. And that, I think, is one of the keys to entrepreneurship, right? Like when your business isn't going well, when you get the no in insurance, when you're going through struggle, some people blame others. It doesn't work in wrestling, and it doesn't work in entrepreneurship. You got to look in the mirror.
I mean, there's never been a wrestler that tried to lose, but they didn't prepare to win. And that's that's my takeaway. Also, you can't hide. You got two people, one walks off with his hand in the air, the other one walks off dejected. So it's up to you to do that. Winning is much more fun than losing. No question about it, except in gambling. Because when you lose in gambling, it's worse than the happiness of winning.
I hate losing. And I think this comes from wrestling and that background. Winning, I love to win. But a lot of what drives me, I hate losing. Because when I lose, I clearly know it's on me. There's no one else other than me and my lack of preparation or my lack of ability or my lack of skill. And I think that's why we lose in business as well. And when I win in business, it's never I, because you can't win alone in business. It's the whole team. I love to celebrate and the team wins. But avoiding that dejected loss after getting my ass kicked, it drives me.
Yeah, well, look, selling life insurance is not easy. I don't know anybody that wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I want to buy life insurance today, or health insurance or any insurance. At least those products you need for business and stuff like that. So we do that. But wrestling's been a great life lesson. I mean, I also look at Penn State right now. College sports, because of NIL, because of the portal, are very different. But there's a reason people flock to Penn State, and it's because of the coach there, Cale Sanderson. I'm quite sure that the wrestlers there get some NIL and stuff like that. But if you want to be the best at wrestling, you go to Cale Sanderson in Penn State. And they've done it maybe 12 years in a row now. When I was first in the insurance business, I would emulate other people. Remember, I started an insurance business. We didn't even have computers. I'm 74 years old now. But there was a guy named Ray Schonke who ran for governor of Maryland. I saw that he started getting into computers, had a color copy machine, had a fax machine, all these things that were brand new. So let me say this to you. I'm 74. I've already had 2 7-hour sessions on AI. I believe that AI can make my business better, easier, for us to communicate better to our clients the value of the products we sell. I want to be way ahead of the curve there. We use Copilot to redo our emails. We're constantly thinking how we can be better. The other thing we try to do is figure out how can we help people. Is there 10 other ways to solve your problem without buying life insurance? And how does life insurance compare against those other 10 ways to do estate planning?
Let's talk about being a lifelong learner, because that's what I hear you saying. In one sentence, you said, I'm 74 years old. And in the next sentence, you said, I'm already 14 hours of training on AI into how I can apply this to my business and help my customer and grow the business. Have you been devoted to learning at every phase?
No. When I went to college, I went to wrestle. I went to meet girls. And maybe a little bit of studying. And when I went to AU, I was lucky enough to get a job right away because I had to. My folks didn't have any money. We had a tuition, so that means I had to have food and board. So I cleaned the ATO fraternity house. They let me live there in the fraternity house for nothing if I cleaned it. Well, guess what? I might have cleaned it once a year. But that was enough for them. And then I started working at a bar. I'll never forget it. It was October my freshman year in college. And a guy named Rich Tomford says to me, "What are you doing tonight?" And God knows I wasn't studying. God knows I didn't have a date. So I ended up washing dishes at a bar down on Wisconsin Avenue. It was called at the time Mr. Henry's. Next night, I was the head chef. That showed you that I didn't have founding farmers teaching. You know, if we had a hamburger, then there was enough food. I worked at Mr. Henry's all through college. And frankly, the guys that owned it, were struggling. So I guess my senior year, at the beginning of my senior year, I was able to buy the restaurant by saving up $13,000 while I was in college. That guy, Tomford, who I mentioned, and another guy, a guy named Mike McKenna, put in $1,600 each. And my uncle loaned me $5,000 for 2 weeks. So we bought it with $20,000 down and the inventory. And we cleaned the place up, and all of a sudden the business did fabulous. We then did 2 other restaurants. One of them didn't do great. And we had the license to run the tavern up at American University. And we did great, and I loved it. I learned a lot through McKenna. McKenna had worked at some different places. So I was always working, he was, but he taught me quite a bit on how to run the place. I learned then, surround yourself with smarter people than you. And unfortunately, Mike died of pancreatic cancer, but we built a nice business, and the place was a zoo every night of the week. Mostly kids, college kids and stuff like that. But lucky enough, because I know you're going to ask me this, how'd you go in the insurance business? I think 1972 or 3, 6 women walked in for lunch. Now I was still in the same mode I was in college. I wanted to meet women. Well, one of the 6 was a very, very attractive young lady. So I said to the waitress, "I'll take that table. Don't worry, I'll give you the tip." Okay. So I bring them glasses of water and sodas with straws in them and oranges and cherries, and I'm doing the best I can to flirt. Now remember, I looked a little bit like a rat. I had a Jufro, a mustache. I had a chipped tooth at the time from wrestling. And then this young lady that I thought was adorable, her sister was like the leader. She said, "We all work at Mass Mutual Life Insurance Company, and that's my sister Amy, and she's kind of engaged." And I'm thinking, kind of engaged, what does that mean? So to make a long story short, 3 or 4 months later, she finally went out with me because it wasn't a quick sale. And
You've learned to be persistent.
I drove the woman crazy. I actually was a little smart. I acted like I didn't care. I started dating one of the other young ladies, well, she was a little older, that worked at Mass Mutual. And I'd call up and I'd say, "Is Valerie there?" And Amy would answer, and she'd say, "Well, don't you want to say hello to me?" I said, "Not particularly." Finally, I got her to go out with me.
And
Valerie was gone.
And how many years have you been married now?
We've been married 47 years and dated for 5.
Wow.
4 children, 7 grandkids, and we have a great marriage.
So you're a dishwasher. You work your way up. You save your money. and you have an opportunity to buy the bar, and you drop out of college and don't finish. That's one semester short. You don't get your degree at that point in life. Did it strike you as a risk to not get your degree, or was it clear that this was an opportunity that you just didn't want to miss?
Well, let me tell you what happened. There's a guy named Dave Feldman who unfortunately is dead now. And I said to him, Dave, I want to buy Mr. Henry's. Do you know the most trustworthy lawyer? So I went down to 1120 Connecticut Avenue and met with this guy, Phil Margolius, who's now probably 85 or 86, still my lawyer and my counselor. And I walked into Phil's office. I think he went to Dartmouth and Yale. I don't know which one first. And I said, I'd feel much better if you took some refresher classes at Montgomery Junior College. I don't even think he laughed. And he said to me, you're taking a big risk here. I said, I don't have anything. I got nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. And I know if we work our asses off, this place will do well. I actually knew it. I was absolutely positive, and we did. But Phil has been a mentor ever since then.
That's maybe the third time in our short conversation so far that you've talked about mentors. Sometimes you use a word and sometimes you don't, but it's the wrestling coach. It's the guys you learn from at the bar. It's the lawyers. People look at you certainly now and think, wow, I wish Alan Meltzer could mentor me, and that this guy looks like he has it all and he knows it all. And in the same breath, you say, you're still a student and you're still trying to learn AI. And then later in life, you go back and you finish your college degree. This combination of mentorship and learning, I think that maybe people don't realize that those are two of the key ingredients. And again, people can look at you from the outside. Wow, this company, hundreds of millions of dollars, it's incredible success. And we can talk about some of the business stuff in a minute. But when you think about the combination of mentorship and being committed to learning, can you see the impact that has on you?
Well, it's extraordinary. About 20 years ago, I started reading a ton. Business books, history, you name it, anti-Semitism, African-American Jewish relationships, Palestinian relationship with Israel. I'm Jewish, my wife's Catholic, but I was brought up with anti-Semitism when I grew up. And, I freely admit I'm a Zionist. I believe Israel should exist. There should be a Jewish state. It's very important in my whole life now. Although I don't think Israel's perfect. And certainly I don't look at the United States as perfect. But I don't believe the United States should not exist.
Agreed.
I would love everything to be better in the world. But so a good example is the other day, I've been trying to learn Hebrew off and on for the last 10 years, but I really took it seriously about 3 years ago. And the young lady that's teaching me, I asked her, do you think there'll ever be peace? It'd be peace in the middle. And she told me about a thing called the prisoner's game. Next thing I do, because I didn't understand everything she was telling me, I went on ChatGPT, found all about the prisoner's game, tried to explain it to my wife, went back to ChatGPT because I didn't do a great job. And, I'm trying to learn about things. So I went back to college in 2018. I'm on the board at American University. American University is very important to me. It's a Harvard on the Potomac, don't you?
That's what I've heard.
I know. Apply to American University. You get a great education. We have a great president, great deans, great provost, great new building. Go to American University. That's my advertisement today.
Nicely done.
Let me say this to you. The provost, a guy named Peter Starr at the time, said to me, if you want to earn your degree, you have to take classes. And I wanted to earn it. So I had to take classes. It was fabulous. I would be on campus with students, stuff like that. I was a little older than the average student. But then I had to take algebra. And I called up Peter Starr. I said, there's no goddamn way I can do this. He says, there's no goddamn way you can earn your degree then. He said, call up the math professor. His name was Professor Lamarzi. I said, look, I've looked at the syllabus. I can't do this. He says to me, there's a woman named Jay James who's the president of the math club. I called up Jay. It was like December 3rd, from December 3rd, 4th, until April 30th. Every morning of the week at 6:30, we had a tutoring class. I ended up getting an 89 on the final. Lamarzi wouldn't give me an A, gave me a B+, and I got my degree. Jay now works with me. I've always had great people working for me. A guy named Greg Carroll, Jack Abel, Arthur Sherrod, my assistant Laura. I could go on, but I'm very, very lucky that I've always tried to hire great people, pay them well, treat them well. I'm much less intense now than I was 30 years ago. I think I drove people crazy. People would say, do you have high blood pressure? I said, no, I give it to people. I mean, really intense. I guess, we've been successful. Of course, what's success? Success doesn't mean making money, by the way.
So what is it? How do you define it?
First is my family. I would say my two daughters, Jennifer and Elizabeth, I probably cheated them a little bit when they were growing up. I worked too much. I had my own flaws. And they've turned out to be fabulous. You know Jenny. She owns a restaurant.
She's a restaurateur. She's great.
Yeah. All set, just so, it's so she has that, Elizabeth. And, I wasn't a perfect father. Nor was I a perfect father to the boys either. But I think as I got, they were old, they're younger, and as they grew up, I think I became a better father. But it's always been a work in progress. And still, today, at 74, I'm still working at it, and I still make mistakes. Right, Elizabeth, if you can hear this. I love my kids more than anything. And they've turned into great, great people. Philanthropic, hardworking. They might be a tad spoiled, but they're not entitled.
And what else is in success?
I think grandchildren. I'm working on that. It's funny you said that I've mentioned people that have been mentors. Occasionally, I used to speak quite a bit for insurance companies. And you have no idea how many people have come up to me and said, you changed my life, which I never realized I did. I had a very poor self-image. I think I like myself now more than I've ever liked myself, but that's a little sad because I'm 74. At 30, you don't have a great self-image. You have to look in the mirror. I think another thing I do is I always look. I try now more and more and more to look through the other person's set of glasses. I know there's been some employees or associates of mine that haven't loved me, and it's probably because I wasn't looking through their set of glasses. I'm quite sure you've had a waiter or manager that you might not be happy with, and then you sit down, and if you listen to them, all of a sudden you can sit in their chair and you say, well, maybe I should change the way I do things. So if you can be successful with your family, and then frankly, my wife and I both came from nothing financially. We both are very charitably inclined. A lot has to do with my relationship with Phil Margolius and his father, who in 1975 asked me if I give money to charity. I said, I never had money to give to charity. And he, pushed me to start thinking that way. So Amy and I, we want to take care of our kids. We want to take care of our grandkids. But if we end up having some wealth when we die, we want to spread that to this community, particularly the D.C. community.
Your generosity, Alan, is only rivaled by your reputation for your intensity. It is a remarkable conversation. I know plenty of business people that define success just about money. They make a ton, and they seem to never help anyone else and never give any away. I love that your story shows that you can care intensely about the business succeeding and at the same time care intensely about the people and the human beings that you're affecting. And of course, we make mistakes along the way. I'm not a perfect dad. I'm not a perfect husband. I'm not a perfect boss. And I am striving to at least be a better version of myself. And this is an aspect of entrepreneurship. If you're not improving as an entrepreneur, you don't make it because the competition changes. The playing field changes. Let's give our listeners a sense of the scale and scope of the company you built. So you start off as a single insurance agent. You're working for yourself, effectively, selling insurance with Mass Mutual. What do you build the company to? How many employees? And give us a sense of dollars and size before NFP comes in and buys the first chunk of the company.
Yeah. So I guess I started in 78, right after we got married. The first thing I did is hire a secretary. The woman's name was Honora Stewart. She was fabulous. And then, primarily I was doing life insurance and really studying, learning all about it. I remember calling up a lawyer at Aaron Fox and say, her name was Lynn Pearl. I said, Miss Pearl, I know you're one of the best lawyers in town for estate planning. I'd like to learn about 5 and 5 powers and hanging powers for crummy things. She said, excuse me, who the hell are you? I said, I'm a new insurance agent. I said, can I buy you lunch? She started chuckling, and we had lunch, and she's retired now, but she and a guy named Earl Colson at Aaron Fox were always great to me, and a guy named Steph Tucker, because I was always picking lawyer brains to get better. To make a long story short, I did okay in that, but then one day I decided to sell health insurance. Best lessons I've ever had. There was a company called Heyman Cash Register. I bought a lot of cash registers when I owned 3 bars. So Alan Heyman bought a $25,000 whole life policy for me. And I said, who do I talk to about health insurance? He says, my brother, Richard. I went into there. I knew nothing about health insurance. Richard had been buying it for maybe 10, 15 years. He tore me a new butt. I'm telling you. I crossed the street. I called up Amy, and I said, we're going to starve. And she said to me, hire somebody that can learn about health insurance that's smarter than you. And she said, and I know that's not a real high bar. I once said to Amy, why do people instantly dislike me? And she said, it saves time.
It's good you have Amy to really tell you the truth.
Yeah, there's
right?
no question about it.
So you build the company up to what?
I kept on hiring people. So in 2001, we sold 100% of the company to NFP, National Financial Partners. But the deal was I still owned half the EBITDA. But we had their back office so we could do better and bigger things.
How big was the company when you did that first transaction?
We
with
had
them?
about 45 employees.
Okay, and give me a sense of what does that mean in revenue generation?
I don't even know the revenue, but when we sold, we were doing $10 million of that EBITDA.
10 million of EBITDA.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful thing.
So I got a nice check, and I kept half the EBITDA. Well, we built it up, and NFP did really, really well, and then it became a public company, and it did really, really bad. So the stock went down maybe to $5, and they took it private with Madison Dearborn. I was actually on their board for maybe 3 or 4 years, and I said to them, your model, in my opinion, doesn't work. You should buy all these management companies back, because let's say they had 180 companies. That means they had 180 CFOs. They had 180 back office people. So they started buying back all the management companies. 2016, they called me up and they said, you're pretty much the only one we haven't bought back. And it was your idea. And I wasn't on the board anymore. I said, well, I said it was a great idea. I didn't say it was good for me. So at that time, I think we were doing 25 to 26 of EBITDA. So I was making half that, and they were making half that. So we went up with Don Rogers to Phil Margolius to a meeting in New York City to discuss them buying me. And they came in, and in all honesty, they lowballed me. I can be a little rat when you put me in a corner. So I walked out of the meeting, and Margolius and Don Rogers just, what are you doing? So they pulled me back in, and the CEO came in, Doug Hammond, who I adore, really good guy, and we made a deal. So they bought 100% of the company. It was a fabulous transaction for me and my employees, 8 or 9 people, maybe 10 people became millionaires. I shared it with them, which I thought was very, very important. Some of them were happy, some weren't. We had a couple of earnouts. Ethan Foxman, who's a fabulous friend and now runs the company, he and I were in lockstep for about 3 years, and now he runs everything. I'm an employee there. I mean, I just sell, and I'm selling a ton still. Enjoy it. Give some advice to entrepreneurs. Once you sell your company, remember they're going to lose your phone number about an hour and a half after the sale. Nobody asked me for advice, which is fine. Second piece of advice, leave your ego at the door. The fact of the matter is they paid me. If they want to ask my advice, they can. But they paid me the price I wanted, and that's the end of it. It's not easy to be an ex-dictator.
Usually the ex-dictators end up hung or in prison. So when I think about it, you're doing pretty well.
Fine. I mean, I was a benevolent dictator. One other thing is this. You talk about philanthropy. The other thing is to be good to your employees. When you're making money, share it. I took everybody on trips. I mean, some of the trips I took 50 people to Hawaii. We took everybody up to Boston and Cape Cod for July 4th. We rented a boat to go all around the Charles River, went down to Cape Cod. I'm actually emulating that now. January 11th, the people on the life insurance side of NFP in my office, I'm taking them for a cruise to Bermuda. So I'm still believe in this because some of these people are never going to be able to do the things that we do on these trips. It's like every year we take people from Mary Center, Hope and Home for Love of Children for 28 years to Butler's Orchard. We did it last Friday night. 200 families are out there. We get buses and stuff like that. Some of these kids never see a place like Butler's Orchard. You don't realize how lucky you are.
One of the most amazing things when I think about business, capitalism, entrepreneurship, is that those of us doing it, we can be a huge force for good. And there's never a downside to being generous. Even if all you care about is making your business successful, if you're generous and you invest in your people, you'll generate returns.
Well, let me tell you a funny story. Maybe 35 years ago, I ended up selling some life insurance to a really smart, engaging guy. His name is Louis Mayberg. Louis and another gentleman who was also amazing, Michael Saper, started one of the most successful companies in Washington, D.C., Pro Funds, Pro Shares. Louis has done fabulous. 6 months ago, I had dinner with him. Maybe it was a year ago. I don't remember. And I said to him, I'm jealous of you for only one thing. The amount of money Louis and his wife, Minette, give away to charity, I'll never be able to do that. I'm not jealous of everything about Louis. I mean, I wish I was as smart as him. Louis, I don't want to be as good looking as you because I'm much better looking. But the ability to give away money to change and transform the world. I mean, look what Bill Gates has done. Warren Buffett. It's extraordinary. I don't think people realize how you can change the world. One last thing. They once asked Baron Rothschild, how rich he was. So he says to his bookkeeper, he says, how rich am I? And the bookkeeper says, what do you mean? He says, how much money have I given away the last 10 years? The bookkeeper says, well, that's not what they're asking. They want how rich you are. That's how rich I am. It's what you give back not what you have. I'm quite sure that most people can live, they're really, really rich. Some of them might have, I mean, don't misunderstand me. Amy and I have everything we want, but we also want to make sure we give back.
It's powerful, Alan, and I'm just soaking it in. And that this question of how do we define success? What matters? What's our purpose? What's the why? I always come back to, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to ask yourself those questions. Anyone can ask those questions. Entrepreneurs just have an opportunity, along with a huge risk, to maybe end up defining their life by how much they can give away.
Yeah, but let me tell you, Dan, you're talking nicely about me. You're a pretty amazing guy. I've invested with you. When COVID came, you're a stand-up guy. What you offered to some of your investors, believe me, I didn't take that for granted, nor did other people. You wanted to treat people fairly. You're an amazing guy. Look, we had a flood, and I was your insurance agent, and something got screwed up. You and I talked like gentlemen, and we took care of the problem. The most important thing is not when things are going good. It's when things are going bad, and two people can have a discussion and come to terms that are mutually beneficial for everybody. You're a mentor to my daughter. You know, restaurant business right now is not easy. Not easy for you, not easy for anybody. And you take a lot of your time to talk to my daughter about things she might be able to do to help her situation. She's been there for 12 years. She's, works her butt off, and it's not easy, but you give back too. I think you get more from giving than getting.
Agreed. And I connect it back to, I think, what my wrestling coach, one of the most important mentors in my life, that wrestling coach I had in high school, Coach Stone, Greg Stone, up in Linfield, Massachusetts, what he gave to me and all of us. He's been there for decades and decades. So when I have the opportunity to do that for Jenny or your daughter or anyone else, you do get more by giving, and you learn along the way. It would be easy, I think, for someone to look at you now and say, wow, everything this guy touches, turns to gold.
I wish.
But there's hard times along the way, and you just brought up, let's just talk about that flood. This is a story worth telling. So,
well, let me tell you the funny story, and I don't think you can put me in the jail for this, but maybe 40 years ago, I couldn't even make payroll. Do you know what check kiting is? Okay. Computers have changed everything. I used to put a check into Bank of Sequoia Bank, then write a check to Bank of Washington, and then write a check to Riggs, so that all three of them gave me credit, but the money really wasn't there. And I was hoping I would get commission checks to cover the check. I always did. But you can't do that right now because of computers. This is 40 years ago. I would absolutely sit by the mailbox waiting for commission checks to come in. I knew they were coming, but we had no money. And every penny I made, I'd put back into the business. We didn't live above our means, but we wanted to make sure we had great employees. Even now, I have 3 or 4 employees that want to retire. They only stay around because of me. They've worked for me for 40 plus years. I'm now trying to hire great new talent so that our business will thrive even when I retire. If I ever retire, I don't plan to. But I think what they call level 5 leadership is when a leader leaves, but leaves his company better than he was there. It's more important that I make sure that we have great people in the future working there. Because, I'm proud of it. Also, you got to service people. So, business, it's complicated.
And it's not complicated.
Exactly. I mean, I once heard from the head of Coca-Cola. Somebody asked him, does advertising work? He says, yeah, we spend $2 billion on advertising. We know 1 billion works. We just don't know which billion it is.
We have so many chances to just get things wrong and get in our own way. You've touched on your own personal journey as a business person, as a dad. And so for me, the story that shows the value that we create is this story of when my company sued your company. But really the way it felt was when I sued you after that flood. But as you said, we just talked about it. We talked about it as gentlemen. We talked about it and tried to understand the situation through each other's eyes. You understood my business decision. I understood yours. And we came through that, concluded that lawsuit with an appropriate settlement. I certainly thought it was appropriate. And our relationship as friends and colleagues just became stronger. I don't think that's the norm. I don't think that's the way it usually goes. How were we able to do it that way?
You know, money is very important, but money's not God. God is God. Relationships, every time I've had an instance like we're talking about right now, and there's 2 or 3 instances, we're not perfect as a company. I can guarantee you that if somebody goes into Founding Farmers or All Set, and they say, we're not happy with the meal, you guys say, don't pay for it, here's dessert. There's other restaurants, they say, well, we're sorry. Who do you go back to? This is 12, 15 years ago this happened with us. Every year we do your insurance. So let's say it cost me some money to do the right thing. Who won? You and me.
Right.
Because you knew I'm a stand-up guy. I appreciated that. That's what it's all about in business. You know, I have to believe that. It's doing the right thing every time, which, you know, people don't always do. The other thing is looking at the other person's perspective. I might not agree with it. That's the whole problem in the world right now. The prisoner's game, you got 2 people. You got using anybody, you know, Ireland, anybody. 2 people can decide to get along, and they both get out of jail in one day. They decide to defect against the other person. One person gets 5 days, the other person gets out. You don't win that way. When in business, relationships, marriage, I'm not a perfect husband. My wife has taken so much crap because of me. But, you know, we've survived it and we've thrived. You know, now she is perfect, right, Amy? But, you know, you grow with your spouse and stuff like that. You know, you're here to make a difference. I know we're winding up, but I'll tell you a story I always tell. There's 2 men walking on a beach. And they're getting closer and closer, and one guy keeps on bending down and throwing in something in the water. So they get closer. He says, what are you doing? He says, well, you see all these starfish on the beach. They're dying unless they throw them back in the water. And the guy says, well, there's hundreds of them, thousands of them. You're not making a difference. He reached down, threw the starfish back in the water. He said, I made a difference to that starfish. You're only here one time. You need to make a difference. And that's what we tried to do. And I know you do it every day, and that's what I'm going to do until I'm 6 feet under.
Alan, I think that is the perfect place for us to end our conversation today. Thank you so much for coming on Founding DC. I loved seeing you, and I love the conversation.
Thank you, WTOP, and Dan Simon.
Love it.